You are listening to Kaisers Kastle.
Hey folks, it's with great privilege that I am able to bring you Jae Byrd Wellls. Jae-Byrd Wellls, common spelling. I ran into this gem of a human being, and I'm very thankful that I did, to get a female perspective on several things. Besides being an author and a person who's devout in the Second Amendment and has knowledge on survival, you know, from a female perspective, which I cannot provide for you. When I ran into her, we were talking on WPR, World Pirate Radio Podcast Network, WPRPN. And with Jaffe Ryder, I met him years ago when we were in the peanut gallery for Leo Ashcroft on Art Bell's channel. And so it's an interesting thing how, you know, we just run into people. And so how are you doing today there, Jae Byrd Wellls?
Hey, great to be here.
Outstanding. I'm glad you're here. So why don't you tell some of the folks, I have the links in the description on YouTube on where they can find your books, but give them a little insight into your different books. And I was shocked, I shouldn't say shocked, I was greatly surprised that you had actually made a book that actually touched on some survival stuff. But first, give us your futurist kind of books first, and then we can jump into everything else.
Well, my soft science fiction novel is called The Tale Begins. It's about... I'm sorry, I gotta do it the correct pitch. The Tale Begins is a soft science fiction novel which questions the heart of humanity when a group of kidnapped individuals are unlawfully experimented on, turning them into basically 21st century mermaids.
Wow. So go a little bit in depth on that.
I had to do a lot of research on a lot of subjects. I talked to zoos, aquariums. I talked to survivalists. I talked to anthropologists. I talked to anybody you can think of, building inspectors. I talked to a whole bunch of different people and looked up a lot of different things. To be able to give a good product, because I don't know about you, but I don't like watching a movie and going, hey, that's not a correct fact. So I tried to provide the readers with correct facts, even though it's got some fiction to it.
Oh yeah, fantasy I think is always more entertaining when, well, Star Wars proved that out, you know. If it has a basis in fact, excuse me, a lot of the stuff that you find even within the quote-unquote Star Wars universe, you'll find some nebulous facts in it. It's almost like the conspiracy theory thing. There's always a grain of truth with every conspiracy theory. Well, there's always a grain of truth. Think about this. Back when Star Trek was big, communicators, and remember our old flip phones, that's nothing more than a Star Trek communicator. I'd love to hear your thoughts on that.
That is so true. My book broaches on the evil DNA splicing and clone splicing and regenerative medicine, and just messing with what is that, the GMO?
Yeah, the genome,
genetically modified.
Yeah, GMO with the food. Yeah, I get it totally.
Yeah, no, I mean they've been threatening to do that with humanity, and so I just kind of broached on that subject because I don't know about you, but I'm tired of reading the old mermaid stories where all you hear about is the the Zeus god and the Triton god, and I wanted more scientific stuff of what we're currently dealing with, and questioning humanity. There goes that fact from was it Jurassic Park? Just because you can do something doesn't mean you should.
Wow, you brought that up. That is, you know what? That's an ethical question that I am just amazed that. See, this is what I'm talking about. It was amazing on our conversation. She broached so many things that I was thinking, well, this, that, and the other. It's so multi-dimensional. I knew she'd be an awesome guest, and I hope you guys will enjoy it, because who would have thought to bring up ethics questions within your own science fiction, quote-unquote, book. That just proves how legit you are when you're trying to put this stuff together. Here you go.
Well, most sci-fi has to do with questioning humanity, and it's like romance has to deal with the feelings, and action has to do with adrenaline rush, and one of the advantages of science fiction is you can approach all those types of genres in one book. I've got readers anywhere from age 9 to up to 50. I don't know what the old cutoff is, but it's just like, some say they like the romance, some say they like the action, the subtle horror, the mystery, and then there's a select of those who say that my book helped them heal their family. So that is a reward in itself, that a science fiction book can sit there and heal a family. One of those families that got healed was, the youngest reader was 9 years old. She saw her 11-year-old sister kidnap my book from their mom and read it, and the mom was so impressed about how the girl was just diving into this huge adult kind of based book with all the ethical questions in it, and so she bought her daughter her own copy and t-shirt and whatnot. And so the 9-year-old girl was like, well, I want you to read it to me. And so this broken family, and it created a bedtime story time with a mom and a 9-year-old daughter with a broken home. And her quote was, when is it going to be on audiobook? Because my mom reads too slow. So,
wow, that's a beautiful thing. That is
pretty awesome.
Yeah, that's a beautiful thing. It's all about empowerment. I don't care who you are. Folks need to feel empowered for how they are and who they are, and that really is a touching story. I know it's all nothing more than just a little screenshot of life, but it just proves that I know a book had a major transformation point for me, and I always treasure that book. But yeah, so keep going. I mean, I want to hear all about your books.
Well, after the soft science fiction book was published in 2014, I started networking on Facebook, and I don't know if you see the links or not, but I've got 3 Facebook accounts now that are almost maxed out on all 3 of them, which is the maxed out on Facebook is 5,000. So that's 14,000 friends on Facebook. And they like reading my daily Jae's Funny But True stories about me and my family, and going into the real world and doing, gardening and Comic-Cons and survival stuff. And so they were like, hey, don't just post these on Facebook. You need to collect them into a book. So there's the Get the Bubble Wrap series. The whole pun on that is I'm a klutz, so I'm always getting hurt. And so that's why everybody's always saying, go get the bubble wrap, Jae. So that's why the Jae's Funny But True series is called Get the Bubble Wrap, Jae.
Get the bubble wrap to help you from... I get it. I totally get it. That is so funny. So you may want
to... it's a tradition to sit there and transition into another topic. People used to sit there and say, hey, is your husband beating on you because you have all these bruises and, you're getting all these concussions and stuff? I'm like, dude, my husband buys me guns. You really think he's beating me? I don't think so, Tim.
There you go. There you go. That's a fact. Nobody's gonna beat a woman with a gun, and that's the whole funniest part for me is when I look at things, and you see this. We've come to this whole plastic culture where everybody assumes that the weaker sex, I hate to say it that way because I don't think that in some aspects, because I am married and just as you are, it amazes me that everybody assumes that there's some weaker sex, that they can't protect themselves. Well, thanks to the power of Smith & Wesson, everybody's equal. And we got a comment.
If rabbits had shotguns, do you think coyotes would be able to kill them?
No, they wouldn't. The funniest part is Cold Warrior. Thanks a lot, buddy. He posted, and he said the power of notifications. So wherever you threw this out, or wherever I threw it out, he got a notification, and he's listening now. So that's out of the people that are listening. I'm watching, so if you make comments, I'll bring them up. But I'm telling you, I knew you would have a draw of people that want to hear what you're saying. And what you're saying is very important, especially about female empowerment. We had a discussion offline where I was like, well, it's hard for a male and a female who are in a relationship, husband and wife team, to do a program like this because, everybody sees their foibles. But when somebody dispassionately can look at somebody and say this person has something of value to empower others, it's something that's a needed conversation, especially when they're not coming from a victim mentality, which I know you've never done. And that's the whole thing.
I'm guilty of that. I think every human is guilty of that.
Okay, I didn't know that. I didn't get that, but I all I saw was you were just go into whatever you want to talk about on. Keep going in on your fictional stories if you want, and if you want to dive into the survival and the Second Amendment, whenever you want to do it, just let me know you're ready to do it, and I'll post the pictures of you, the you are today. All right?
Well, let's go back a few years if we want to talk about female empowerment and science fiction. I was writing. I've had pretty hard life. My son was 3 when he had cancer. And so we've been through a lot of hard times. And I started writing a book series called it was Motherhood Shush, Some Things Not Discussed in Junior High. And I had started putting my poetry throughout that book. And I had a couple of women and mothers read it, and they were like, wow, this is so empowering to mothers. And then something bad happened, and I couldn't write about it. And I wrote my poem that I wrote about it was from a third person perspective because I couldn't even deal with it myself. And I went down that victim hole of, life is bad, boo-hoo, and I couldn't get past it. And I'm like, you know what? In order for other people to accept me for me, I have to accept myself. And that's what I did. I started writing about mermaids, my human electric cave catfish. So if you read one of the main characters, she's an aquaphobic mermaid, and I nicknamed her Hope. If you read about Hope, some of her trials and tribulations of dealing with PTSD was me actually working through the depression and the PTSD of something bad happening. So, so I'm sorry to say, but cool. You can't separate fiction from nonfiction because it just makes or breaks you. And, you know, in order to become a powerful voice and encouraging and inspiring others, you have to say, okay, I was a victim, but no more.
That right there is a pivotal moment. The veterans who listen to me, they'll understand this. We all know there is a point when a human being has a breaking point. And the dependent thing that I've always found is your brother standing next to you? Do you have some aspect that you can talk to of people that without judgment will listen? And so what you're saying is ringing very true in my ears, and I'll let you continue on. Please do.
Put me on the spot there now. So yeah, I did go ahead and put my poetry in a poem book, so that's published. So you've got my sci-fi, you've got my Jae's Funny But True, and then you've got my poetry book right now, and everybody's waiting for the second sci-fi. And one of the things about writing is you don't want to stunt yourself. And with the first book, I stunted myself. I tried to write it to where a Mennonite lady could read it, and that kept me from being who I am. And so once I started writing for me and for the story, then it came out. And the sequel that I'm working on, I was stunting myself, and I was like, okay, there's plot holes, I can't fix them. Why can't I fix them? And it was like I kept trying to write about trying to keep it to the young adult thing. And you can't do that when you've got a human electric cave catfish introduced into humanity, and all of a sudden, you know, what would happen? You know, well, they would be, you know, condemned as being a new race. And then not only that, but, you know, foreign powers of government would want to sit there and get that technology and that power, not to mention the mafia. So, yeah, there's a spoiler alert there for the sequel. The mafia's in the sequel.
Wow, that's interesting. You're touching on some truisms that we even see happening today, and yet you're putting it into a... See, I've always felt that sci-fi is nothing more than preconditioning to reality. And it depends on the person's perspective on how they push it in to that reality, on how it's perceived by the people. An example would be Animal Farm from George Orwell. And I think I'm seeing... I have not read that book. To be very clear, I can't wait to. But the thing is, I'm seeing nuance that maybe you're pushing something from a human perspective for people to say, almost a warning. Am I correct in that assumption?
Well, I mean, most, I hate to say it, but most sci-fis are kind of a warning that, you know, just because you can do something doesn't mean you should. I mean, think about Gattaca and iRobot. And even though that those there are entertaining and fascinating movies, not to mention Enemy of the State, those are fascinating movies, but it's the what if. It's the questioning humanity. What if we go down this road? This could possibly happen. And I hate to point it out, but I wrote about racism before it was cool. Because in my book, in my sci-fi book, I really did do a lot of research when it came to genetics and stuff. And so one of the main characters, they didn't know that their father or grandfather was from Africa, and so they have this black skin color that seeps through their family history, and they don't know it. And his daughter comes up black in a white family, and so it really sits there and shows, kind of teases the audience about racism. without really getting heavy into it. And then you've got the whole aspect of an actual real race. See, I don't know about the audience, but I know for a fact that the word race means the feline race, the canine race, the equine race, the bovine race. And when you sit there and you try to put humans' skin color as a different race, you actually ignite hate. And I am so trying to bring back love and into this world, because I have been shown so much hate growing up, and in the last 17 years is really bad. I've been shown a lot of hate. I get hate now, especially being a public figure. And my biggest concerns is to try to make sure that people remember how to live, love, learn, and laugh again. And the only way you're going to be able to do that is to understand language. Understand that English has a lot of miscommunication. And, just bring back the love factor in humanity. Don't concentrate on what's on the outside. Stop thinking that that you're walking in somebody else's shoes when you don't know how to walk in their shoes. They're the only ones that know how to walk in their own shoes.
Well, my thought process is similar, but it comes from a combat soldier / Marine and, former guy. You know what I did for a living. Anyways, and everybody on my page knows what I've done. My thing's similar. If you've proven yourself next to me in combat, then I don't care what your race is.
And see, there you go, using that incorrect word again.
No, I understand. I'm trying to use the word you just brought up, the verbiage that you brought up. And,
yeah.
And the thing is, I agree, it's a human race, but it becomes a cultural thing. And it's not cultural from like America, because Americans are Americans no matter where they go. Okay? It doesn't
Before
matter.
The hyphens came.
Yeah, there's no hyphens on that. Okay? But there is a meme that people can digress to, and I don't want to get into this. Look, this is a topic I don't want to touch on my channel. Just saying. But I have the same opinion, but I also want to have proof of the person's integrity, honesty. I want to have proof that they will lay down as much as I will, because I've had Muslims die for me. I've had and Muslims not a race, it's a religion, because there's Muslims of all colors. I've had people who are darker skinned than I am, being half Sicilian and half German. I've had them lay down their stuff for me, and I would have laid down my stuff for them, and they know this. And the whole thing is, we've come to a point, sadly, where people, they're devolving to the meme, I guess is what I'm trying to say. And I don't want to push this, because honestly I'm more interested in you as the human being that you are, and I think you're a very good human being, and I'd rather just stick to the things that we discussed, your books, which are epic. I'd rather stick to the things that, survival, Second Amendment kind of things. So
well, see, and that's the thing
picture.
Is, I have been hated for being Second Amendment. I have been judged for being my religion. I have been judged for my skin color. I've been judged. And the thing is, you know what? Why don't you just look at me as who I am and who I'm trying to be?
Right.
And about the hate about the Second Amendment, there were several editors and several, I think they're called beta readers, where they'll read the book before it's published, and they're like, oh, you need to take guns out of the book because it'll drive readers away.
Wow.
I was told not to broach on the whole gun thing in my book. And that was before, I wrote about this before the whole huge debate on guns. So there's people that'll sit there and give an author huge backlash on Facebook. Because 50 years ago, when an author wrote a book, you didn't talk to the author. You didn't find out about who they were as a person. And nowadays, it seems like the common reader thinks that they cannot read a book unless they find out about the author's convictions. And that really puts us on a spot where we're hated more. And
that blows my mind.
That's where I was kind of going at with that whole hate thing, was because, you know what, you haven't walked in my shoes. You might think you know me on Facebook, but you really don't, because you only know what I give you. And that happens in humanity, where you walk a certain step in front of certain people so as to not offend them or walk on eggshells. And that's why one of the reasons I became such a huge Second Amendment advocate is because, it was crushing on my First Amendment rights to write about guns. I've been talking to some other authors who they were told the same thing. They said, you will not be published unless you take guns out of your book. And they did it. They fell for it. They caved, and they took guns out of their book just so they could be published. And it's like, I was kind of like Fiona growing up, where it was like I'm claustrophobic and people sitting there making me hide my life under a bushel. And that's the thing about my sci-fi, is that it's the first step for me into no longer hiding my life from a bush and saying, this is who I am. This is what I like. I like belly dancing. I like bullets. I made bullet earrings. I made bullet jewelry. I made soap, punny soap that was in the shape of guns. There'd be like a little hand and then a gun, so it was a handgun, or a bear and a gun and a bear gun. And so I made all these kind of funny, humorous things. And I'm still judged for supporting the Second Amendment. And some people just don't understand that when I was growing up, my dad died, and my grandpa showed my brother his gun. I knew he had guns, but I never saw them. Because he went and hunted. He talked about hunting. He had a couple of deer heads, but I was never allowed to look at it. And after my dad died, he showed my brother his gun, and he's like, go away. This is none of your business. You don't need to know about this. So I left thinking, well, the Second Amendment only applied to guys. I really did. I thought that it was good to have the Second Amendment, but it didn't apply to me. So then when I married my husband, I knew he supported the Second Amendment. I knew he had guns, but I was afraid to touch them because, that was a guy thing. You didn't touch that. That was a guy thing. And then after that, I told you that bad thing happened to me and I played the victim. My husband pushed me into getting my CCW. And at first I dragged my feet. I wasn't very happy that he made me do it, but I am thankful that he did, because a couple years after he had me go through training, and that's the thing about guns, is once you go through training, then it's just a tool. It's just an object. It's not to be feared. I mean, it's just like, it's almost like people fearing the water, and that's, hey, I wrote about that in my sci-fi book, an aquaphobic mermaid. She was afraid of water. It's just like, you focus on something and you make yourself the victim when you focus on that. And that's the same thing I did with guns, was that I focused on it and, I didn't understand it. Something that you don't understand, you fear. And so
I agree.
and I didn't even mention the fact that the local cops sat there and said that they weren't obligated to come to my house. I had skunks and opossums literally chasing me in my own yard right by my house. And the cops are like, well, get your neighbors to come over and shoot it for you. We're not obligated. Or you're stupid because you don't know how to shoot a gun, because if you're going to live out here, you need to learn how to survive on your own. And those words really struck me.
Right.
And I had coyotes. They came up to our front door in broad daylight, took out 70 chickens. I wasn't able to put my kids on the ground. And I had to carry my kids when I walked out to do chores, because if I put them down, they would take them. The coyotes would come in and take my kids just like they would take the goats.
Yep.
And there was cougars. And so there's me playing the victim again. It's like, you know, I sit there and yell at the coyotes and they think I was stupid. So I learned how to shoot.
You found out words don't really matter when the dog is at the gate, right? I mean, this is the whole
that
funny...
applies to two-legged predators too. I mean, you can wear a wedding ring and still get molested. You know, it just, words don't mean nothing. You have to defend yourself.
The victim needs
I had a goat try to kill me. A male goat.
Okay, go on with that. Yeah.
I had not had my gun on me, I would not be talking to you right now.
Wow.
He's and that's the thing is not just goats can sit there and turn on you, but horses and cows, you know, all sorts of animals. I'm sure if there was a giraffe or an elephant around, they'd turn on humans too.
Well, I'll tell you, being an equestrian that rides horses, even, well, I'm not going to get into my adventures, but because this show is about you. But I never ride a horse without a sidearm on me, because if I get thrown, the only way to stop me getting killed is bullets to the horse. And I'm sorry, but
stomp on you.
They can stomp on you, whatever, but
exactly,
you don't know what's going through a horse's mind. Remember the old adage of horse sense, and if they're scared or whatever, they get spooked, you can be dragged to death. And my Opa, fortunately, said whenever you ride a horse, always when I rode my first horse at, I think I was 5, he put a revolver on my hip. And he said, if you get thrown, shoot the horse. I don't know if I would have done it at that age, but I had the ability to do it. So what you're speaking is truth, and it's nothing more than sound judgment. And that's what we're missing, honestly. Cold Warrior said a giraffe killed a guy a couple weeks ago. Yeah, you're exactly right. They will. I'm telling you, man. When I say man, I'm not calling you a man. I'm just using a terminology, so I don't want you to be offended by that. And I'm not trying to.
Oh my God, I'm offended. Yeah. I need my safe place.
Oh, you need your safe space. Let me get you a coloring book and some stuffies. You know, no.
Well, make sure it's the swear word coloring book.
I know you're not like that. I'm just saying, it's so funny that in this culture, that's something that you may want to touch on, is how the culture is. And I would appreciate it if you did, how the culture has actually tried to feminize men and to make women feel less than men. I do believe that's what this whole quote-unquote empowerment, false empowerment thing is. And it's to make them equal, but women aren't equal and men aren't equal to women. But together we make a whole. And that's something I think that is being sadly missed.
I broached that in my sci-fi book, where we're a family, and everybody has their own part. You might be the steering wheel, but I'm the brakes or the gas.
There you go.
And in order to make a car go forward, you all have your different strengths and weaknesses. And
Yep.
I hate to say that a lot of problems in society now is because, women needed a pushback to say that we needed more rights. But I think in some aspects we went just a little too far. And I'm not just saying I went too far because I wasn't there. But I think the whole push for, women needed to be able to do different things like play football and, fulfill dreams like that. But women are not weak in the fact that we understand that, yes, a man is mentally, spiritually, emotionally, has to be on top of the food chain. And we need to, understand our place. And I'm going to get pissed off a whole bunch of feminists, but, when you've got, I've seen so many relationships where the woman tries to be the head of the house,
Right.
and the man and the women, they just sit there and they fight and they argue. And it's not a healthy relationship because somebody has to be on top. You can't be completely equal. I'm sorry. Mm-hmm. Somebody has to be on top. And a good man will understand that even though he's on top, that he can still make sure that woman becomes the person she's supposed to be.
Exactly. Exactly.
It takes a good leader. As there's a difference between a man making the woman kiss his toes, and a difference between that and the man sitting there and saying, "Hey, I really think we need to go with this brand of washing machine, and you need to just let me make that decision."
Or even in an easier way to describe it, there is a time when my wife will say, "Is this really where you want to go with this, right? Or you really want to bring this out this way or that way?" And it's an important thing because a woman does make the man complete. There's reasons why biblically, and I don't want to bring the Bible into it all like that, but what I'm saying is there's a reason why men and women complement each other, strengths and weaknesses. And I'm fortunate, just like I know you're fortunate, that we have that balance. And there is a balance to life, the yin and the yang. And I think that's what we're missing today. I mean, if I were to throw some joke out that's off color or whatever, or you were to, I'm not going to take offense to it. I'm sure you wouldn't. My wife definitely wouldn't. And even words, honestly, I despise words right now because words are the way everybody gets so offended. And I'm sorry, but the Constitution was made for the words that would offend the most. And it's protected speech. But you're seeing in Europe right now where words, oh my God, we got to prosecute you over words. It's absolutely ridiculousness. And love to hear your comments on that.
Well, all I can see is sorry, it's Babylon all over again. It's where everybody thinks they're speaking the same language and they're misunderstanding it. It's just like, for example, like if you read the New Testament, when Jesus is talking to the Pharisees, according to the English, he's just saying law, the word law. But if you go and you look at the original text, they actually have a specific word for a specific instance. Like in Hebrew, there's 5 different types of sacrifice, and in Greek, there's like 5 different words for the same word of law, but it's different. So it's like Jesus is sitting there and saying, well, your disciples don't keep the Torah, and the Pharisees are going, well, your disciples don't keep the Talmud. But that's in the old language of Greek. But in English, all you read is the word law. Well, your disciples don't keep the law. Well, your disciples don't keep the law. And that's the problem with English language, is that you can say the word dude, and it can mean 2 different things. You can say the word sick, and it can mean something good or bad. And that's the problem with and it's not just the word English language. It's how the culture has taken the English language and expect that we're just supposed to survive on everybody just kind of changing things.
Right, but it's changing things in a bad way. I mean, it's
not.
It's absolutely.
It's creating confusion.
Yeah. I totally get where you come from, but honestly, the most empowering thing that I remember.
And that words have power. Yes. I'm sorry to get all mystical on you, but and words are in some ways magic, because words have power in meaning, and that just goes back to the whole fact of where I was saying, they're my new human electric cave catfish race, they're being condemned for something that is out of their control. They cannot control their past.
I get it. Yep.
And and that's the thing is that that's the reminder of people just to sit down, stop, don't have a panic attack, and just learn how to respectfully agree to disagree and love again.
Exactly. I could look. You and I have had a couple discussions since the show, and that was the thing that was so phenomenal. I can disagree with you. You can disagree with me, and guess what? Neither of us get ass hurt. I'm not yelling at you. I'm not saying you're a bad person for thinking something, and you do the same thing to me. It's a courtesy, and that's what people don't understand is we can agree to disagree on some things, but where we agree is the more important part, and that's where we gel as a society, and that's something that I think we.
When you concentrate on the negativity, that's all you see. When you concentrate on being a victim, that's all you see.
Exactly. And that's why I thought that, honestly, I thought that this would be an important conversation, a male and a female who do not, honestly, folks, we don't know each other except for a couple conversations. She hails from the great state of Kansas. I hail from the great state of Ohio. And politically, we may not agree on a whole lot of stuff, or we may. And I don't know that. We haven't had that in-depth of a conversation. But the good thing is she's honest. And honest conversation is all we ever should expect from either side. And honestly, we're missing that now. When we did have it in the... trust me on this. I know you're probably not as old as I am, but I'm going on 50. But the funniest thing is, back in the 70s, we had men that talked a certain way. Hey, we can go even into the 80s, and you had Eddie Murphy talking about homosexuals, talking about blacks, talking about whites, talking about everybody, and all comedians did that. Now comedians, and we're talking about a Jewish guy, Jerry Seinfeld, who says he will never play a college campus again because he's afraid of getting sued. That's absolute fucking ridiculous. And trust me, we're on my YouTube, so if you want to drop the F-bomb, you're more than welcome to, or whatever words. I don't edit. I don't want to edit people. It's absolutely ridiculous when people can't speak their mind, because if you edit people who speak their mind, this is what you have seen happen. You will cause violence, because if you can't speak your mind, the only thing you have left is your fist. And I want to hear your comments on
And I think that we've reached a point in society where people are being stunted of being themselves and being able to stand up for themselves. And I'm sorry, the problem is not the bullies. The problem is stunting the victims from standing up for themselves. And I think that by telling, I'm sorry, but there's a time and place to get a fist fight out of your system. And I think we've reached a point where the kids aren't able to do that, and they're imagining the most powerful lashing out that they can. My son, he was bullied forever for the last several years, and this last school year, this one kid who's, I guess even the teacher said that he had it coming, but he just poked the bear until the bear just had to defend themselves. And they were on the playground, and my son was like, this kid just starts punching at me, and I was so proud of myself because I used the self-defense moves, and he didn't say it, but he kind of basically said, well, Mom, I'm glad that you made me take self-defense class, and he was so glad that he used the self-defense moves. And then, the kid started punching his neck, and so he just returned the punch because he wanted it to end.
Right.
And he stopped the threat, and then all of a sudden, that kid had it out of his system. He lost, but he had it out of his system, and the whole school didn't call my son a pussy anymore. I don't know how else to say that.
No, I get what you're saying, because look, back in my era, I went to a totally mixed integrated school. And the interesting part to me was we would meet behind, there was a botanical place called Frank's Nursery and Crafts. And we'd meet behind there and get into a fight. Sheriff's department would show up, whatever. And this is back in the day, back in the 80s. And honestly, here's what would happen. I had a beef with you, or you had a beef with me. We get into a fight. That fight happens. And the interesting part was, normally afterwards, no matter who it was, you'd go have a drink with that person.
Yeah.
Afterwards, and it was squashed. But that pheromone, that testosterone had to get a dump.
Yep.
Through that fight to bring honest conversation, and honestly, it's a softening of our society. Okay, I'm sorry.
My book, I was condemned because one of the main characters is buddy with somebody that he shouldn't be characters with. They should be mortal enemies. But I drew on the history that, I had a person in high school, trying to set up me and this lady into a fight, a physical fight. And she was poking the bear. And we ended up becoming friends. We should have been mortal enemies, and we came out coming up friends. I helped her deliver her baby.
That's cool.
That's the thing in society, is that nowadays there's such a push for victims to stay victims and not to express themselves. And people are telling women that when some guy is raping them, that they should just piss themselves. Well, how do you know that guy didn't have a fantasy in the first place about a gal pissing herself?
Right. It's freaky.
You're telling the victim to become more of a victim?
Yeah, you're telling her you have to humiliate yourself to avoid something that a freak show's bringing to you. That's just it's bullshittery, it's ass fuckery, and it's fuckeries afoot. because honestly, a woman, like I said earlier, Smith and Wesson made us all equal, and that's an important thing.
When you choose internally to stop being a victim and stop being a slave, and I'm gonna say it because that's the thing, is when you're not empowered, you look like a slave, you act like a slave, you don't have eye contact. When you're a victim, you don't have eye contact, and you scrunch down, and it's a whole different attitude than when you're empowered and you walk upright. And you walk like you can't be touched, you can't be hurt. And I'm not saying you can't be hurt, but, you know, be more aware of your surroundings. And a victim will just sit there and just focus on the internal fears and hate and jealousy and rage and hopelessness. And
that's the thing I teach we have a female who teaches the females, and the company I work for when I'm home, when I'm not overseas. And she's an awesome lady, married to my brother. I'm not going to get into names and stuff or companies, but she deals with the females. But we will come in. I get beat up by the females all the time, and I just laugh about it. You know, it's pads and whatever. But we make sure they understand the moves. And, you know, women can defend themselves. Look, when you said what you said, it's not that they look at you as a victim. They look at you as food. You have to think of prey and predator. And
exactly.
That's the way she puts it to them. And you don't deserve to be prey. And you don't deserve
I deserve to be on top of the food chain.
There you go. There you go. And that's the thing, because so many people are so, on the female side, are so indoctrinated that they have to be the prey. You know, they got to be demure. They got to be this. Yes, okay. If you want to be, that's fine. But when you get that feeling in your stomach and you know something's about to happen, this is what I tell everybody all the time, especially in my gun classes. I tell them, look, you know when things are going to go bad. Your stomach's almost like an early warning device when those butterflies develop. And I say there's no shame if you're going through a grocery store, if you're pushing a bass cart, that's what we call them. I know some people call them buggies or whatever, with food in it. And all of a sudden some dude's following you. You know that's happening. And there's no shame in going up to the service desk and saying, can you call the police? I've been, make turns to see if dude's still following you. You'll know when it happens. And then all of a sudden, if that's confirmed, your next move is not to go through checkout. Your next move is to go to the service desk. And they may think that person, that idiot who's doing that, may think you're just going to complain about some food product. You can even act disgusted when you pick something up because you know what's happening. And even pick up that product and say, I'm going to make a complaint. Say it out loud. And he'll still follow you up there because he's a moron. And you say it, but also when you walk out to your car, make sure to park far enough away where you can drive right out straight through. You never park where you got to back out. Look under your car. Look in the back seat of your car. Look everywhere to see if somebody's lying in wait for you, because you don't know what's happening. If you have that feeling.
That goes back on where, conflict is in the world. It's not going to go away. My mom hated any kind of conflict. She thought good conflict was bad conflict. And me and my brother were not allowed to have absolutely any conflict whatsoever. So it would bottle up in us until we were able to take it to the side and just have conflict. And it ended up being bad conflict because we weren't taught how to have good conflict. And that good conflict is where we need to be able to discuss things and agree to disagree respectfully. That is good conflict.
Yes, it is. It truly
That is good. And you cannot get rid of conflict because it's part of life. I mean, it's, even though yin yang is balanced, there's still a conflict within its borders. And it's still pushing against each other. So conflict happens. And the thing is that we need to be able to teach these kids what is good conflict and what is bad conflict. Good conflict, you getting, somebody's starting to beat up on you, you need to be able to defend yourself, period, end quote. Bad conflict would be, well, you can't, step away from them, play the victim, and then it just kind of builds up into bad conflict. And back on the Second Amendment topic, I took one of the classes where it was the active shooters class, and they made us watch the actual security footage for Columbine.
Right.
And it's scary. It's really scary because what I saw was people rolling over and playing the victim.
Yes.
And that's what they're taught, is to just play the victim, and then the bad guy will stop treating you as a victim. No, it's just like on my farm.
Back. You fight back.
We had, for example, I told you how bad the coyotes were coming in. We had a herding dog, and I don't know if you guys know what a herding dog is, but they're trained to herd the animal. And they have this herding instinct. And we had this herding dog. Yeah. I think it was a corgi. And he trained the chickens that he would get them in a certain location, and if they sat down, he would leave them alone. Well, you can't do that with coyotes. The chickens, they sat down thinking that the predator was just going to leave them alone. And they were trained to play the victim, and all of a sudden, they became a huge victim. They were dead. There was no life after that.
Well,
and that's with humans. You can't just be beat into a complete victim status, and then you'll never be able to rise out of it alive.
You're seeing it with Europe right now. Here's something Cold Warrior said, and it's very true. He's on my page. I'm reading the stuff so you understand the comments we're getting, which are good comments. Ronnie, when he says that, he means Ronald Reagan, could drink with Tip ONeill, Thomas Tip ONeill, and that was the head of Congress at the time. And they would hash out stuff and smoke cigars in the White House. Neither of them would take their jackets off. Tip ONeill was a legendary. This man was not a communist. He was not somebody trying to subvert the government. And they could have an actual conversation and disagree on everything. But they can still have a conversation. Cold Warriors,
and they can still have a cup of tea.
Yeah, they solved a lot of things. There was also problems. I mean, I'm not gonna whitewash stuff. I love Reagan. I think the world of Tip ONeill. I honestly do think the world of both of those human beings. They were honest brokers. We don't have that now, and that's the problem. I mean, everybody wants to dox everybody. Everybody wants to know where everybody lives, so we can maybe go to your house, fuck with your kids, fuck with your wife. They don't care because of this internet dichotomy that we've somehow created, which is bullshit. But this is what our world's become. And they want to report you to the FBI or whatever because, I bodyguarded all kinds of people all my life. And
there's nosy bodies reporting people to the Child Protective Services because they don't go to church. Oh my God.
That's a freaky situation I don't even want to get into because that does happen. or you don't vaccinate your kids or whatever. Yeah, you have all kinds of weird shit. But what I'm saying is,
I proudly posted the other day about how my son had taken care of 2 snakes by himself. See, the snakes, they around here, they'll go after our baby chicks. And I got condemned because I had proudly posted that, hey, when I had dealt with a snake in the chicken house with my son, he played the victim. And here, 2 days later or the day later, he wasn't playing the victim anymore. He'd taken care of the snakes all by himself. And I was proud of him for that.
Hell yeah, he took the hoe to their heads.
I got condemned because, oh my God, we're killing snakes. And killing snakes should be illegal. What, are you paying my bill? Are you paying my medical bills? Have you bought my books? Right. Have you fed me? I don't get free shit. I have to sit there and provide my own meals because I'm middle class. And middle class gets dumped on.
Exactly.
We get dumped on from the class and we get dumped on from the higher class. We get dumped on. I mean, if you want to go down the rabbit hole, but my generation is a smaller generation than what generation is above me? The boomer class? The boomer... baby boomers.
You have the baby boomers, and then you have Gen Xers.
They were empowered to be able to abort their babies. And the problem with that is that they aborted more than half of my generation, I think it was. And then they expect us to feed and clothe them when they're older. We're overworked. The middle class, the common average middle class nowadays is my generation. We're overworked because we're supposed to be taking care of the baby boomers, and we're supposed to be taking care of this millennial class coming up where they say they don't have to work and they get free shit. I was sitting here talking, and evidently you took off.
No, I had a problem clicking it on for some reason. No, I definitely was listening to you, and it's your generation is more the millennial generation, and I look at it like this: there was a failure in 2 prongs. I love my mother, you know this. I mean, we've talked about this offline. We'll not talk about it again. She was a baby boomer, you know this, and then I'm a Gen Xer.
I used to be a Gen Xer, and then now they're trying to group me with the millennial. I have no idea. They keep changing stuff.
Well, it's 30 something. It depends on if you were born in the 80s, you were millennial now.
Originally, originally I was told I was a Gen Xer, and now they're saying I'm a millennial.
There you go.
But
there you go. But
that's a huge group of people now.
I know, and the problem is, I heard everything you said. The problem is, the millennials did get a raw deal, and I'll tell you why. There's 2 reasons. The baby boomers, they were having a good time. Gen Xers.
Somebody had to pay for their crimes.
Well, no. I'm not saying in my particular instance. My mother and I grew up, my twin sister too, we grew up in a trailer park, okay? I lived in a submarine. I had a very small little area where I grew up in. Not playing the victim, I'm just saying that was my life. And I went in the military at 17 because I had to go see the world. I ended up Forrest Gumping, just checking out things and being places and getting captured by cameras. The interesting part for me is with my son, I told him he is a straight up millennial. And I said, this is your life. You live your life the way you want. I did not indoctrinate him, did not give him my politics. I haven't even done that to my wife. I keep my stuff completely separate from everybody else, including my work. It's just not their business. The beautiful part is that I did tell them, you know, I've always said, read this, look at this, look at this. And that's what I saw that the parents of myself did not do. And so it opened us up to an attack from within. The enemy is within. It's not without. This is how Rome fell. And we have a republic. It's an argument I have all the time with people. They're like, oh, we're a democracy. I'm like, no, we're not. We're a democratic republic, and republic being the same thing. Daggone, when Mr. Franklin walked out of the house after they signed the Constitution and everything and said, what form of government did you give us? He goes, I gave you a republic for as long as it'll last.
Keep it.
If you can keep it. Yeah. And that's the thing. But everybody wants to say we're a democracy. We are not a democracy. We are a republic. And
well, that's the culture that's the culture that we've become, is that people keep trying to change meanings to words. And you know, how do you change a culture? How do you change well, you make fun of the people and condemn the people that keep the old ways. That I don't know if you guys know this, but April Fool's Day came about because for thousands of years the beginning of April was the first of the year. I mean, think about it. December, that's 10.
Right.
Not 12, 10. And so the people who kept April 1st as the New Year's was condemned and made look the fool because they kept it. And it's like the people in power wanted to change to December 31st being the end of the year and January 1st being the beginning of the year. So they encouraged them to make fun of the people who kept the old ways. And that's what's happening today, where people are in power are trying to change this into a democracy by making fun of those who still call it a democratic republic.
Oh, you'll love this one then, since you said April Fool's Day. Are you ready for a funny story? I'll tell you one.
Yes.
If you want one. August 7th, 1st Marine Division and 1st FSG, which is Force Service Support Group in the Marine Corps. We were lock, stock, and barrel. Lock, stock, and barrel means, if you look at the old flintlocks, it was the lock of the hammer, the stock of the gun, no matter if it's a pistol or a rifle, and the barrel of it, right? That's where that terminology came from. And we were there, lock, stock, and barrel, in the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia on August 7th. Nobody can refute this. It's a fact. It's historical. And like I said, I just keep Forrest Gumping myself into these fucked up situations. But the funny thing is, I was out on highway patrol on Tariq 121. And this dude comes up behind me. He's a good dude. He was a military policeman too in the Marine Corps. It's 5811. And he's got his lights going, and I'm like, who the fuck is trying to pull me over? And so I finally pulled over, and I'm like, what the fuck? I get out of my car, I'm like, what the fuck? He goes, dude, you gotta get back, you're flying home today. And I looked, first thing I did was look at my fucking date, and I'm like, oh, it's April Fool's Day, man, fuck you, shut the fuck up. And he goes, no, dude, you're flying out, you're going home. So from August to April, it's about 9 months, if I remember right. 8-9 months, something like that. I was in the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, and Southern Iraq during that time. And that's what kicked this whole thing off, and that's why I've spent from that time on 1/4 of my life in the Near East, and I'm pretty acclimated to it. I understand it. I get it. There's a lot of issues. I'm not gonna say there's not, but yeah. So April Fool's Day, when you said that, I was like, yeah, I thought I was getting fuckarooed, but yeah, no, I ended up going right back. So what's your thoughts?
I just kind of listening to everything, just so nice to be able to just visit with somebody that actually has intelligence.
Well, it's a lot of fun to me. I mean, life just happens. You have to enjoy it. We can cry, piss, bitch, and moan about it, but honestly, you have to take what you're given. And in all honesty, that's the only way to be an honest broker. And I'm thankful that I've met nothing but, honestly, I can say this, I've met nothing but good folks along the way as I Forrest Gump myself through all the bullshit. So would love to
I'm definitely
hear
meeting
your
that.
thoughts.
I went to I was a guest at a Comic-Con in Missouri this last weekend, and met a autistic boy, and he had seen that I was coming to Missouri, and so he wanted me to read his book that he had written.
Cool.
And he kept kind of messaging me before I was there, and I was like desperately trying to plant around here, and so I finally just messaged him. I felt like the creator told me, don't make him upset, just let him know that you can't talk to him right now, but you will make time for him when you get there. And I did, and I made time for him when I was there, and then he had me meet his mom, and she's like, I didn't expect, this is the first time that my son has ever did this, and I didn't expect for him to meet somebody that cared. And that's the thing about, it seems like I'm stuck doing the Comic-Con world, is that it seems like the creator just wants me to remind everybody that there is somebody who cares. So I definitely, I have many stories about blessing people along the way, and
Right. No,
and this
I completely get what you're saying.
you wouldn't think that would happen at a Comic-Con, but some people just need to be reminded that there's a kind soul out there, and not just people stabbing each other in the back.
Here's the thing that edifies me with what you just said. I'm going to be very honest with you. In my line of work, in what I do, I've been fortunate. I've met people globally who do what I do. I honestly am not the best. I'm not the most perfect person. I've had many mentees. My mentors are still on my page. I did an interview I think it's a week back, with Colonel X, and he's a phenomenal human being. The interesting thing is, I was told in my youth that mentoring is what you should do. And you don't indoctrinate. You don't try to tell them what to think. You teach them how to think.
How to think, exactly.
And,
we've lost that nowadays.
But see, that's the key. It's you have to be the person you are, and that's the key to everything. And you don't have to be a perfect person. All you have to be is someone who deals in the real. And it kind of saddens me. I mean, you know, everybody, you know this, being an author. I'm not an author, but many people know what I do for a living. And trust me, they do. I mean, you know, you don't get a visit from certain agencies if they're not upset by what you're saying. And it makes me laugh because it's like, yeah, okay, you're here now. We're talking. So what do you want to hear? What do you want to know? And they say, well, this, that, and the other. And I'm like, yeah, that picture's famous, right? Well, that person that you see me next to is a bag of shit. But I've done worse for the U.S. government. And then I say, by the way, that person you're showing me, I know he's a Fed. Because you got to remember, I was a Fed. I know how they run this shit. The deep state is not, I'm not clueless to this. And it makes me laugh. Because they're like, well, no, this, that, and the other. And I'm like, guys, cool. That's what you know. You know that. But in my mind, I'm like, boys, you don't have the clearance, I guess. Because you don't know the truth. I do know the truth. My whole entire epoch is to find the truth. I've delved into many things to find the truth. And I know the honorable. I know the dishonorable. And that is what our lot in life should be. Is to find honor and to find dishonor. And I've done that before. I've even been accused of saying I'm this, that, and the other. And I just laugh about it. Because I did that for purpose. To suss out bags of shit. And I have done that. And so, you're not going to shame me. I know what the hell I do. And I don't think anybody else understands what I do. But I've done it. And that's the thing we need to do. We need to be honest, honorable. And that's something I love with WP, World Pirate Radio, Podcast Network. That's something that Jaffe is completely dedicated to, and so am I, among helping, giving something back to people with the Robin Hood Project. This is something I know he's devoted to, and I can't wait. Before we get to that portion of it, why don't you go into your survival thing, your thought process on certain things? Because from a female perspective, I want to really hear that.
Survival? Maybe you should give me a better question. What about survival?
From like a tornado or something. How somebody in your area sets up to make sure they have food if everything goes wrong.
Well,
to make sure they have a way to heat their house, as you talked with me offline, how you have heat in your house and candles to see and all that stuff.
First off, you got to get out of the mindset of the doomsday culture. You can't go around living life saying, oh my god, the sky's falling, it's gonna fall next week. When you sit there and you're so devoted to doomsday, you forget to live. And so there's a difference between being into survival of the fittest and being aware of your surroundings and going around saying, oh, the sky's falling, we're all gonna die. Okay, fine. Yellowstone has had a lot of earthquakes lately. You know, okay, so we know that. But we're never going to be ready as we think we are. I mean, because you can't walk around with a mask for protection for by the time you would pack for everything, you
You'd be
would.
loaded out. You couldn't put an SUV with all the gear. I know what
Yeah,
you're saying.
I think it's kind of excuse my French, but it's kind of crazy to sit there and build your house in a bowl that could flood any second.
Right.
I think that's completely stupid. I think it's stupid to sit there and then cry about it when it happens. I think it's stupid to build your house on a, what is it? Was Mount Vesuvius that there and erupted?
Right.
You know, it just.
Right.
I think it's kind of stupid to put yourself in that position, but at the same time, if that's where you're called to go, you know what? You can't change that. If that's where you're called to go, that's your shoes that you want to walk on. But me personally, I can't do that. Yeah, I do like Kansas. I used to swear up and down I was gonna move away from Kansas all my life, and then here I am, still stuck in it.
I did too, from Ohio.
One of the things I loved about Kansas was that we, just had tornadoes, and I couldn't deal with earthquakes. And here the last couple of years, we dealt with earthquakes because some fuel companies sat there and didn't harvest the oil correctly, and so it caused an increase in earthquakes. And they fixed that. They fixed that, and so we're not having earthquakes like we did. But you can't prepare for tornadoes when they drop out of the sky. I mean, my son was 4 and 2, no, maybe 5 and 3, and I was griping at them all day to go out and get the eggs, and I really felt like I had to have them, do that chore, that it needed to be done, and I couldn't sit there and let them get away with murder not doing it. And I hurried them out there to go do it, and I looked up, and I swear to God, I saw a funnel cloud just thinking about coming down. I'm like, holy crap, and I started praying a mile a minute, and then I remember looking at the sky, and I'm like, you know what? If I'm to be judged, then I'm to be judged.
Right.
And we went inside, and we went downstairs to hide, and the next day somebody said that they'd seen a tornado on my property. So that probably dropped into a tornado. I had another tornado experience where I was hiding with my mom under the pool table. And I don't know why we were hiding under the pool table, but that's where she felt like we needed to, because when she was a little girl, her house was picked up with a tornado. It was the whole Dorothy experience, and her family and her dad was holding a table with them under the table. So I guess that's why my mom had me hide under the pool table. It was a little bit heavier, but the slate, you can't sit there and you can't sometimes the tornado will rip a house to shreds. Sometimes the tornado will pick up a house and put it down right where it came from. And you can't predict exactly what will happen.
The outcome.
But where I live, we can't rely on man's technology. We can't rely on electricity. I have been without power for 10 days in a snowstorm. And at the time, the local community was so nasty, they couldn't even bother shoveling the snow out of our driveway. So my husband couldn't even go to work. We couldn't get out of our own driveway.
Right.
And they didn't start shoveling snow until the kids went to public school. And they're like, oh, well, we should start shoveling snow there. No, they couldn't even shovel snow. So, yes, I did have to have some times when I just survived on what food we had in stock. And so I'm not going to go into religion, but my husband went through some of the Mormon background, and so he was trained in his brain that you needed to have a year's supply of food on hand. And we don't follow that to a T, but I tell you what, that idea in itself has saved us so many times by trying to have stuff stocked up. Because, like, during the winter, my husband doesn't get a huge paycheck, and so what we have stocked up helps us through those times of oh, hey, a bill came in, and we can't we can't afford food, so we got to sit there and just rely on what we have stocked up. So yes, I do believe that you should at least have a month or 2 months supply on hand, of the basic bare necessities of life. I mean, we stupidly tried to put the freezer goods in coolers out in the snow, and it didn't keep it cold enough, so we had to give it to the dogs. So it definitely am not into the whole freezer idea of preservation. One of the reasons why humans crave salt and smoke is because it's that caveman knowledge ingrained in our DNA saying that this is the safest method of preservation. Right. So that's why people crave bacon so much, is because it's a caveman instinct of preservation. So I have gone all into extracts. I've been making extracts out the wazoo. I make herbal extracts that are used for medicinal, and then some for fun, like vanilla extract. I like making what's called fire tonic. Basic recipe is apple cider vinegar, lemons, oranges, garlic, and onions, and then I add a whole bunch of different kind of good vitamins to it. But some people use it, and peppers, and it's like a multivitamin that you can actually digest instead of a multivitamin that you're just putting in the septic system. I learned just the other day why people are our food isn't alive anymore. And a lot of our chemical problems are because our food isn't alive, and we're going to process goods, and we're increasing in our health problems because we're losing that alive, the live vitamins in our food. Somebody pointed out about the gamey taste. Our moods are people who don't eat gamey meat actually have an increased depression problem. So it's interesting how adrenaline in the meat is actually healthy for us as humans, because evidently we need to eat adrenaline in meat, and that's why sheep and goats, they're naturally skittish. So we get and even cows are naturally skittish. So we get that adrenaline in our food from that. But when you're sitting there and you're just sticking them in places where they're not moving and interacting, then they're losing that adrenaline in their blood. And so it increases depression. One of the things I learned was in the last 50 years, we're having more health problems because we're using a lot more rubber shoes. Instead of the electrons, the positives and negatives balancing out when we're walking on the ground, that rubber sole is keeping all the negative electrons in our body and not letting that balance. And so I really do believe in the just get back to nature, get back to live foods, get back to interacting. I'm not saying quit playing video games. I'm saying, okay, fine, go out for a walk barefoot, just balance your life. Learn how to grow stuff on your own. I mean, and that's problem with the society nowadays, is we're becoming economically to the point where we're having to start clanning up, saying, hey, I make shoes, you make dresses, let's trade. We've reached a point where, you know what, stop playing the victim. Stop saying, okay, well,
we're reverting the government, to the mean. We're reverting to the mean.
Don't, there's, like me, I can't sit there and get free shit. We didn't have help paying for my son's chemo. It was us and insurance. And, people, the government doesn't look at how many times your vehicle dies, or, if coyotes took out $4,000 worth of your animals. The government doesn't count that. All they see is the gross income on paper. They don't see that you got to pay for glasses. They don't see that you got to pay for shoes and clothes for your kids. They don't see that you bought a 1930 house with 1930s plumbing that has to be redone. They don't count fixes and basic maintenance on your house. And they just, I'm sorry, they tax the middle class to death, where we're expected to pay for everybody to get free shit, and we're just supposed to sit here and survive. So we are reaching a point in society where you need to start growing your own herbs and spices and your own meats and your own dairy and your own food, and you need to be able to learn how to can for yourself and make jelly and jam, and you need to be able to learn how to make bread. Oh man, we've learned all sorts of things this last year of the idea of quit playing the victim. Okay, so we can't have free shit, so let's learn how to make it.
Yeah.
So just this last weekend, I bought something to start learning how to make my own beer.
You're exactly right. Here's the funniest part to me when you bring this up. This is why we were talking earlier. The thing is you do understand the premise of survival. I mean, we were talking about where I live, I have a basement. My house was built in like 1881. It's the oldest house in my town. And the funniest part to me, it's now a small project, but if you go to our courthouse, it'll be all this property, right? Well, it's no longer that way. So it makes me laugh when I see that how squashed it got when we got it. Finally, when we bought it, it's paid off. But the thing is we have wood. We can burn on our wood burner to keep us warm in the winter. If there's a tornado, that may not be a source. Okay? But we have sources, and of course, since it was built in 1881 in Ohio, we also, somebody during the 50s made a bomb shelter, and it's a heaved up, revved up bomb shelter, but it was built for that, right? And people don't realize that, time distance shielding, and that includes the heat thing. If it's not that, if it's just a winter storm, which we've suffered through a couple of them where we didn't have electricity. Fortunately, we were able to put foodstuffs out of our freezers into the snow when it happened. And so we didn't lose the foodstuffs. But it could happen. I mean, you got like 2.5 days until that freezer becomes nothing. And then if it does become nothing, then what's the shame of having a barbecue, an open barbecue with your neighbors, who you know? You should know your neighbors. Meet your neighbors. And
that's scary.
And you feed them, with what you have. If it's going to go bad, might as well go bad in somebody else's belly. You see what I'm saying? So...
Yeah. I was staying with a friend this last weekend, and she didn't even know the names of her neighbors. And they're like, at least like 30 neighbors next to her, and she didn't know one name. I was like, holy crap.
Isn't that a shame? But see, there's ways to build those bridges. Have block parties where everybody eats food together. Everybody listens to jazz music. They listen to whatever music they want to listen to. But
they're forgetting to sit down for a cup of tea and smoke a cigar together to agree to disagree.
Exactly.
Everybody's just afraid to live.
Exactly. And that's what like I said, I wanted a female perspective on this because I
I hope I
definitely,
provided it.
you did, and you definitely did not um, say anything that I don't espouse. I think you're a vital voice in a lot of ways for the Second Amendment and also for survival and also for your books. I mean, your books, they may be fantasy, but they are
One of them is.
needed. They're needed in
Well,
this day and age, in my opinion.
it, I'm sorry, but there's some people call the Bible a myth or a fable. Well, okay, so old stories are still supposed to teach morality lessons. You know, you should be able to learn from stories from other cultures. You should be able to learn from movies. When we get done with the movie, I ask my kids, "What was your favorite part?
Right.
What was your least favorite part? What part is fake? What part is real? What did you learn from it?" And I think we've lost that, where we're just wanting to be entertained for the sake of entertaining, and we're not questioning living. How can we be a better person? How can we be a hero in 10 years? Just we've
Everything
lost that
should be questioned.
tea party sit down conversation where we're able to agree to disagree. And that's the thing is you should be able to watch Transformers or Star Wars or whatever movie, and you should be able to say, "Hey, I see a morality here," or "Hey, that's not moral." And that's the thing about life is we should be able to live, and part of living is understanding life. I don't care if it's fiction or science fiction or nonfiction. You should be able to learn to grow.
And I agree with that. That's the whole thing that's so beautiful. Like I said, I felt value. Folks, if you feel value with what she said, I'm telling you, buy her books. There's some good stuff in there. Look, you're not going to get everything you want, but always mine for that grain of truth. And with her, you're getting honesty, and I mean this, Jay. You're getting honesty. You're getting somebody that's trying to tell you something. You may disagree with some of the stuff that she says, but in all honesty, who are you to judge until you've read it? And there's some interesting things that might make you go, And that moment that I found, even overseas, there's a reason why I thought she was a valuable voice, and I hope you all understand the reason why. I think that there is something. Just expand your mind. I'm not saying be so open-minded your brains fall out, because she won't even do that. I'm saying be open-minded to maybe a new thought process, and
That's why
find
I have liberals and conservatives fans on my fan pages and my friends, is because I'm honest and they know my point of view, and they understand that I think that we should agree to disagree, and that's definitely helped me be successful. Is that I don't sit there and hide the fact that I'm a mix between libertarian, conservative, Republican, and independent. That's just who I am. And so, yeah, I have fans that are liberals and fans that are conservatives, and I've had haters on both sides. Where on my walls, I say no name calling, because once you put up name calling, then you put up walls. And I've actually had people change their opinion about the Second Amendment just because they were treated with respect. Respect goes a long way in life.
Yes, it does. Yes,
It's
it
a
does.
gift that needs to be keep giving. And I think we've lost chivalry, and I would like chivalry to come back.
That is something I would like to see too. And there's an honesty to it. There's a whole lot to it, I'm very thankful, Jay. Honestly, Jae Byrd, I'm very thankful you came on my podcast. I think we've had an honest discussion, and I hope that you feel that you can come back anytime you want, because I would definitely love to have you back. As I said, we've had a couple of discussions, very minor kind of things, but we kind of know each other a little bit, and I think she's of value to anybody that wants to honestly explore, challenge your paradigm. Jae Byrd Wellls will help you, and the links are all in the description on Yahoo or on YouTube. They're all in the description, and you're not going to be disappointed. She is giving you the real deal in her opinion, and if you like it or not, that's fine. But hopefully, I think you will like it if you actually don't just scratch the surface, but you actually delve into it. And there are times when fiction does mirror reality, and that's something people need to think about and look at. And she's an honest broker, or I wouldn't have brought her on. So, and you know I know that, and I mean that, right, Jay?
Oh, yeah.
All right, with that, I'm gonna do the outro, and I want to thank you very much, honestly, and it has been my blessing that I've gotten to meet you, and just wanted to let you know that. So hopefully,
I appreciate
we all
the time.
hopefully we all get to talk again soon. I really do want to have another conversation very soon. So here we go. Gonna go and do my outro for Kaisers Kastle. You guys have all been welcomed to my place, and always know that you can go to her place and you can find more knowledge if you want. And I hope you do that. All right. God bless. Chef out.